What is going on, my good people? Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Say That Podcast. And y'all know my motto, don't say this, say that. This is the start of a new era. This is the first time you've actually seen me back in the studio for a while now. You know, we've had the Cypher dropping, which was awesome. We just had episode 100, the live recording right here at AOA Studios, and that was fucking dope. So now we're back to our regularly scheduled programming. And before I introduce the guests, I want to thank everybody who's tuned in to the first ever Say That Cypher. The love has been unbelievable. Even in the comments, y'all are arguing who has the best verse. And you know what? Me personally, I'll let y'all decide who has the best verse. Because that's what that's about. You know what I'm saying? We're highlighting these artists. These artists have been on the podcast before. If not, they have helped in some way. And that is the goal with future ciphers. So whenever you see a Say That Pod cipher coming up, just know all the guests involved have been entangled with Say That in some way. So I'm very appreciative of all the artists on there. It's Kim Iandolo, David Ryan, Zafir, Jeff Porter, Julian Mendoza, and Isaac Groove. Go show them some love. And go watch that cypher out now on YouTube. And if you want to listen to the audio, it's out now on all music DSPs. Technically, my first ever track. And I also want to give a shout out to Cam and Z for doing the mixing and mastering on the project. And I want to give a shout out to my guy, Chairman Chow, on the beat. I love it. And of course, I got a shout out shot by Scarfo. Mike Scarfo for shooting the video. You know what I'm saying? Good job, man. You know what I mean? But other than that, ladies and gentlemen, you may have just saw this is episode 101. 101. We're on our Zoe 101 shit today. You know what I mean? Just dropped episode 100. If you haven't, go watch that now. And of course, make sure you follow me on Instagram, REPETE617. And the podcast page is say_that_pod. But now I'm going to introduce you to the guest today. And this guest literally has been a very, very long time coming. I feel like I say that with a lot of guests, but this guest, I really mean it, because I've known this guy since the first ever testing lab. Shout out to Museums TV. And that was January 2022. Podcast wasn't even back right then. But I've seen this man's journey throughout the years, and his ascension as an artist and a producer and just an overall person has been amazing to see. All the way out from Holyoke, Massachusetts. He made the ride out here, folks. You got to give it up for him for that. Please welcome my guy, D Kizzle. DK, what's up?
Good, bro.
What's up, man?
How are you?
How was the ride out there?
Oh, long.
Well, of course.
My AC isn't really working in my old 2012 Honda CR-V like that, and it's a leather car, so it's
a little hot one today.
Oh yeah, it's a little hot, and I don't know why I decided to wear sweatpants and a sweatshirt when I sweat in 60 degrees, let alone 84. So
that's a little workout right there.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
workout.
Get your sweat on.
Yep.
But I want to, because I haven't said this on the podcast at all. It was dead funny the first time I seen you at the testing lab. I'm like, you introduced yourself, but I didn't hear his name. I kept going like, what's this guy's name? Like, was it? Like, I don't know. So I'm like, and you were killing it. So I'm like, I'm taking a video, right? And of course, you know, you bald like me, bald and proud over here. Yeah. And I'm recording you. I post on my story. I'm like, I don't know this guy's name. And so I just go, Kurt Angle's going crazy out here. And you slid up. It's like, and I wasn't trying to be a dick, but I was like, I hope you don't think I'm a dick. I literally just didn't know his name.
No, that shit was so funny. That's a great. I mean, if I could be compared to any bald guy, I'd probably be that guy.
Of course. I mean, lo and behold, you're a wrestling fan like me, so it was like, oh, all right, word. That all worked out perfectly. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a dope time. And I really hadn't dropped a lot of music even in that time. Like I did the testing lab and I had like a few songs, but I didn't really make a ton of my own stuff even since then until like probably, you know, the last 6 months.
Did you drop second place?
Yeah, I dropped second place when that
happened
around that time, and I was dropping like singles and stuff like that, but you know, I kind of was working a lot and producing was just more fruitful and successful at the time. And so I was sort of working on that. Like, I'm not naive. Like, I understood that, like, producing was more successful for me. I understood that, you know, at the time, you know, not, you know, before this album, everybody was wanting a DK beat or, you know,
I heard DK go crazy. I heard that ad-lib on a lot of songs.
Yeah,
that wasn't your own, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I produced a lot of stuff, and a lot of people were just gravitating towards that. And, you know, to be successful in music, you know, obviously, you know, you love the art and you want to create, but you also have to kind of understand, like, it is a business at the end of the day. And, you know, I had to sort of build myself up, and I was making good money at the time doing that. And so that's what I was sort of focused on, even though, like, when I did the testing lab, I was like, okay, I still have that reassurance, like, as a performer and as an artist to, you know, continue moving in that sort of love, especially all the way out here in East Mass, where
Right.
it's a while to drive, and not a lot of people know about artists from the west side of Mass and stuff like that. It was like really endearing and affirming for me.
Well, of course, because before that, I had only known Muda, and he was there too as well that
Yeah.
night. But then I heard you because I don't want to box you in as like a rapper.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of like singing, like musical R&B, like a lot of soul in
Yeah.
there. So I don't really classify you as like a rapper.
Yeah.
It's really you really do show your artist side with a lot of these tracks and a lot of these songs. But I think what if you could tell the good people and say that right now is how do you find that balance between like producing where everyone you may have known you just from mixing and making a beat and you're like, oh no, I also make songs, to like your actual artistry with the songs.
Well, originally I got into producing because I was an artist, right? So like I got into producing because my dad, I grew up around my dad who's a musician and learned lessons with guitar and eventually when I was making beats on Logic, I'd learned keyboard and all of those other instruments. And I just started making beats for myself when I was like, there's beats on YouTube and there's no hate to YouTube beats, but it does get very, very price constraining when making songs like that and putting all that effort into some of those stuff to do. And that's what I really started doing. But then over time, when I started to make these beats with other artists and other people, my beats just sort of carried me more than my artistry did. So the balance really was in the beginning of 2025 this year. I just decided I need to make an album because I keep saying I'm going to follow up this album from all these years ago when I did stuff with Turntable Teachers and all this other stuff. Like, I was like, I'm going to sit here all day long and be like, I need to make this album. I need to make this album. No, you just got to do it.
Right.
And I did have to take a step back from the production side of things just because it was like, I can make a fire beat, but if I make a fire beat and send it out, there's a good chance that someone's going to go on it and I'm not going to go on it. Right. So like, that's where I was like, no, if I catch a melody on this beat or I really like this beat, I'm going to try to take it and I'm going to try to write to it. So that's really where I came from. And like right now, I really don't know what, that balance is going to be moving forward because, I do have albums coming out with songs already made from like a year ago, coming out like soon with other artists and stuff like that. And, working on other projects with other people. But at the same time, like I need to really assess, the reaction of this project, how it does, and what to move forward with, because I love being a producer at the end of the day, but if my artistry is going to take me to where I wanted to go with my original goal back when I started in 2017, like I got to kind of put my eggs in that basket too. So it'll be interesting, but I don't know. I don't know yet. You know?
Of course, right? Because it's good to have all these tools of the trade. Because even if like let's say you take a year off producing, you don't really lose that skill. Like I feel like all kind of I can't speak because even I had this conversation with my mom. She goes like, "Why don't you get into producing?" I'm like, "No." Like I don't mean to age myself out, but like if I did get into producing, it would have been or in 2015, it would have been when I was like 18 or 19.
Yeah.
I just feel like where we are as a state, we got a lot of great producers that, I understand the working alongside things, but I also understand the music business side of things where it's like some people think this guy's better than that guy. And I'm like, I'm not trying to compete in that sense. I'm like, I'm good with my pod. I'm good with like, and plus one of my friends producers that I hang out with all the time, I look at that screen, I'm like, maybe I'm dyslexic or something like that, or because that shit gives me anxiety.
Yeah.
Like just looking at it. So if anyone knows how to use those programming, it's like I salute you because that shit fucking confuses me.
But you do lose it, like if you don't produce constantly. Okay. Well, like I would say I'm at a skill level of doing it, all the time for such a long time that I have the ability to make like a good beat here and there. But I was making like this year has been like I don't want to say one of the worst years for beats for me because I used beats on my album, but like it hasn't been like as much because a lot of times what I'll do is like I'll sit and I'll make 4, 5, 6 beats in 2 hours and really just try to go from there and what beat I can arrange and then what beat maybe I can place or record for myself. Like you do lose that if you're not consistently doing it at least like 3 times a week. Like, there's people that are like producing and making songs every day. Like there's a certain part of your career where you do need to do that in order to build that 10,000 hour skill set that everyone talks about. But, I don't want to lose that part of me. That's part of me has gotten me to where I've gotten today and
Right.
all that. But there is, you do lose it. Like I lost it when it came to recording, right? Like I didn't record for a long time because I would record like on samples and stuff like that. I had got like my major placement with a dude, I believe it's 2K Baby or whatever, who signed a Tusi's label, and I used a vocal loop for that. So like the recording side of things with sampling is very different than actually like making songs.
Yeah.
But I did definitely lose that sort of that ability for a while, and I had to like come back to that. Not every song I recorded for this album made the album. Like you have to kind of you need to have a bigger batch of things to be able to take down from the bigger batch of things to put out a product, in my opinion. Like if you only have X amount of songs, like it's hard to like chop down from there and do that. So
Well, this album's incredible. You know what I'm saying? I know the personal backstory behind it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people might not, but I think I like how you named it DK. Who are you?
Mm-hmm.
It's like you're asking yourself that question, but you're actually asking the audience to ask that question as well.
Yeah.
So, what's kind of the theme or message you want your listener base to take from this album?
Don't be afraid of being completely vulnerable, and don't be afraid to tap into the emotions and feelings that you oppress consciously and subconsciously. Like I really laid every thing and trial and tribulation on this album.
Right.
I really didn't hide a lot of that, and I think that's what you really need to do when you feel like your life, in your career or just in general, you feel like your life is maybe stagnant, or you have these goals but you haven't actually put the action to the words. And I really just need to put action to the words and really just lay everything out on the table and try for that. And with this album, I really just was like trying to throw every sort of subgenre or any sort of type of production or type of song at the wall with this album. It being 8 songs and only 20 minutes, I was like, it's a short enough listen on a car ride, but whatever songs people gravitate towards is going to help me in the future with making other stuff. Because I think a lot of times people will be like, oh, you shouldn't really listen or gauge what people say. And to that I say, to an extent, right? Like, yes, I don't want to take every person's word, for fact, but at the same time, if you have friends and fans of yours and people that are listening to your music gravitating towards like 2 songs that are not necessarily like, if I put like I'm not a rapper, right? Like I don't rap like over Griselda beats, but like let's say I put like a rap song on there and people didn't like that rap song, but they like the singing song. Like when I did like the acoustic song, a lot of people have been being like, you got to do more acoustic stuff, right? So like that's like kind of a tidbit that I'm going to take and be like, okay, maybe I should do that more and really analyze, because like it's the same thing if you were working as a business. If this product isn't selling this much, but your other product that you didn't think was going to sell is selling a lot, you need to restructure that in order to prolong and grow as a business. So that's sort of how I envision myself, and really just wanted to like let people know like this is me, and the DK Who Are You is more so just like self-identity, like who am I? I'm an ever-changing person, and I think that's what I try to tell the listeners of this is like, you need to give yourself grace and allow yourself to be ever-changing. Right.
And what I'm kind of just came to me now is like how I'm not trying to use simple as like an insult or critique, but like how simple you made such a deep message where it's like, you're smiling on the album cover, but you actually listen to the, all the songs on the album. It's like, you're almost screaming, like, it's the internal screaming of like, I got to get this emotion out. I got to get like the story out. I got to tell people how it actually feels. So I think as a whole, the album's a great metaphor for like everyday person, because even if it wasn't like DK, who are you? It's like, all right, Mike, who are you? Pete, who are you? It's like, what are you really going through? And like, what are the steps you do to try to let it out? Because, I know with all the melodies you've done, all the, vocals and singing, people like, they want party music, but it's like if you actually like take the time to like actually listen to these songs, they can be party music in a way. It's like, what I'm saying? You can catch somewhat of a vibe, even though you're like the message is a lot deeper than just the party
like
stuff. You know what I mean?
And that's what like for instance, I did like Say When to kind of make it like a party song. That was like the idea of it. But there's other songs, that I didn't expect people to say that, but I have gotten like, oh, this song would do well in a club. And in my head, I know the backstory behind it. And I'm like,
Yeah, exactly.
I'm
No,
like,
exactly.
I was like, I'll tell you this much: over the course of the last 2 years, I was not partying to these feelings and emotions.
Right,
Like,
exactly.
I was down bad,
Right.
and so that's kind of it's nice to hear. But
Well, because it's like I felt that way with like second place. You know what I mean? That's obviously like to me, that's your number one song. Maybe I'm a little biased
No,
there.
no,
'Cause
no,
I just,
yeah.
I really like it that much, but. I was like, yeah, I could play this on like the radio. I can play this at like, maybe not a club, like a bar, like
Yeah.
a vibey place because while, the message, like I said, the messages are there, but it's how you've portrayed it, how you actually like get it out. Like you're not just like crying and screaming into the mic. You're actually like singing. I feel like you're speaking to me personally a lot on this specific album too, as well as a
Yeah.
listener.
oh, I
So
appreciate that.
there's, and I know just from a guy standpoint, heartbreak and all that. It's tough to get over, especially if like you're a creative, because I've noticed that like over the years when I kind of say I have a podcast and stuff like that, I kind of get met with like not the evil eye, but like the like exactly the like why
Yeah.
like type shit. It's like I feel like the only people that understand, and I shouldn't say the only, but there's a rare like breed of partners who where you explain to them I have a creative process and they actually embrace it with you. Like I've heard Mike Scarfo talk about this with his fiance where she's literally like, no, you go do your thing. You know what I'm saying? You're going to go kill it. You're going to crush it. But I just feel like, from what I've experienced is like when I say, I have a podcast, and this may be a fault of podcast culture. I've had to explain it's not like, the Andrew Tate bullshit or the alpha fucking male, all that dumb shit.
Tate makes bald people look bad. Fuck
Seriously.
Andrew Tate.
Seriously. I feel like we got I feel like it was like, all right, bald's kind of sexy. He starts doing it. It's like,
Yeah,
that's a stop.
he ruined it.
You know what I mean? Right. But to get back to my main point, it's like, yeah, is this industry oversaturated podcasting? Yes. Is there like, a cliff for a lot of people? Sure. But like, I just feel like as a creative, and you're a creative as well, Mike, having a partner that understands that, like, you know what, you don't get paid for this right away. You get that carries a lot more. But when I listen to your tape, it's like, you're letting all that shit out. You're letting that breathe with like, okay, this is what actually happened to me. I want you, because I'm not gonna give it all away. Y'all go listen to it right now. You know what I mean? I ain't gonna give all the story away, but. That's why I think the music's really admirable, because while we can go, oh, I'm stunting on my ex, but it's like all that like toxic X shit. I feel like this is like more better written than like.
Well, I like that you say that because I think this was a heartbreak for me that changed my life as an individual, right? Like this wasn't a situation in this album that I talked about a lot where I'll go and be like, oh, this was a toxic relationship, screw her. It was in some sense, right? But a big thing is like my ex and my ex's, I've only dated really two people, and both of them were supportive, I would say, of my creative. They might have just not understood it, and they also might have not, for their own personal, I guess, sort of issues and things that they dealt with in the past, they didn't necessarily understand the attention of that, what I would get, whether it be like people come up to me, be like, oh, I remember you from UMass, or, oh, I remember you from this, right? And that part of it is troublesome in a relationship, and it gets, more tumultuous sometimes when you do get more popular. And I'm not saying I'm anybody, right, but cool. Being from where I am in Western Mass, it's a small area. People know you. I'm also not necessarily a type of person that you can miss in a crowd.
Yeah.
So...
Especially when you had hair. You know what I mean?
Especially when I had hair.
I've seen the fix, yeah.
Yeah. But it's like with this album, like, to basically just allude to what everything and be right. Transparent. Like, I was cheated on, but I think it's naive of anybody to look at somebody that does that may, physically and emotionally cheat, right? And be like, well, were you 100% perfect? Right? Because I wasn't, right? Like, I'll just be like upfront. Like, I was in a year ago, I was in a massive gambling addiction, like to the point where I was doing it all the time, all day long, always on my phone, always looking at parlays, always doing that. And, I would be on my phone and I would be running money up and trying to support a lifestyle and all of that. And
also, was this around the time you tore your ACL?
so to really give the backstory of it is I tore my meniscus 2 years ago.
That's what it was.
And it was bad. Like, I didn't realize how debilitating that leg injury was going to be. Like, I thought I was going to be back walking around in like a month or two, because like, there's two different types of meniscus surgeries where it's like they'll go in and they'll do like a quick like solder repair and you go out, and then there's the full repair. And I didn't think I was going to get the full repair, but because there was such a long time from the injury to surgery, and I had already walked and I had to move, into my home at the time and move out in places, like my knee was blown up to the point where they had to do like a full surgery. So I went from not walking, I didn't walk for 6-7 months. And at that time, that's when the sports books came out in mass. So I was sitting up with my leg up, making beats for 15 hours a day. And then the only excitement, like, I love making music, right? But like anything that you do to an extent of 12 to 15 hours, you will get burnt out. And I don't care what anyone says, you will.
No, right.
Right. And so that was the excitement that I would get when I would be like, all right, I'm going to put on a game. I'm going to put on this. And then it just got to the point where I was doing it all the time. Like,
Totally.
I remember like the last day I ever bet, which was August 7th of last year. I remember I got dumped, right? And I didn't understand like sort of the other stuff that happened with like the infidelity and things like that. And I remember I just parked and went and I spent, I think it was like $60 on the gambling apps in Connecticut, because you can do like the apps. And I remember I sat in an idle car for 45 minutes. I don't remember one thing, right? I don't drink, right? So it's like, but I literally had like a mental blackout of where I was just locked in. And then I realized I had to like, I was like, screw it. I got to go to therapy. I got to go to GA. I got to go like, there's not like outpatient gambling rehab. I didn't think it was that bad, but I went to like, I called, I got a sponsor and the whole 9 yards. So for this album, it was like, yes, there was things that happened, and yes, it was toxic. And yes, there's things that, in my relationship that people came to me as like, you can't deal with this. This is non-negotiable, all this stuff. And while I understand that, at the same point, what did you do to make said person commit such a heinous or emotionally tumultuous act to do something to you to break that love and trust, right? That's what this album was. It wasn't just like 100% screw you. Yeah. It wasn't 100% do all that. It was, no, like, when I broke up with her, I had to change my life. I had to realize things about me that were problems when I was 19 years old, right? That I didn't really understand or think was an issue or just negated. But like, it really was an issue. And that's sort of where I laid it all out on the album and sort of tried to tell people like, yes, people can do very bad things to you, but you need to understand what you're going to do in the future as a person when you go into the next relationship or you go into the next, part of your life, and how are you going to be able to really fix that and move forward? Because I could have sat there and been like, oh, you did this, that wrong, right? But what did I do wrong? Yeah. Right? What did I do wrong to do that? And that's really where sort of everything sort of came about. And
well, I really love that, and honestly, as your friend, hearing you take accountability, being brave enough to admit that, because a lot of men really aren't, is very admirable and applaudable. So I salute you for that. So yeah, you're about 10 months sober now from gambling, which is dope. Yep. And I think that kind of highlights a problem with society. Where you don't smoke, you don't drink, but there's another vice. There's I feel like, at least in today's society, and I've seen it back then too, but I just feel like with everything and all the information we have, there are just too many vices to get into, where it's like, okay, here's the vice and here's the cure. You're going to get one to go to the other, and the cycle's going to keep rotating, unless you're like that, like, let's just say 20% of person that actually breaks free. So I think that's what you just said. I'm glad you said it on air, and that people can have it for a very long time. It does highlight an issue, with guys. I'm not trying to single out women. I'm sure there's women addicts, don't get me wrong, but just from my experience and perspective, because I've seen it with a lot of guys, specifically gambling, yes. Yeah. And I can say that as someone who was just in Las Vegas for WrestleMania. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, and who was at the blackjack tables. Not addictively, but it's like, all right, when in Rome type of shit.
And like, look, like, I had to take a break from it, but like, I'll go to the casino just to like, watch UFC, because I'm still a big UFC fan and stuff like that. Yeah. But like, I know that like, I just can't do it, right? Like, there's other things like that, but it is a huge problem.
It is.
It's a huge problem, especially in Massachusetts where we have such cold winters and things aren't popping. And there's way more stuff to do in the east side than there's the west side. Like
Right,
the
exactly.
west side, if you really think about it, from like Greenfield all the way down to Agawam, where I'm from, and then all the way up to Lee, the space is probably 3 times the amount of size as the coast of Boston, but with an eighth of the people.
Right.
So like
It's all forest, pretty much.
like there's nothing to do. There's nothing to chase that dopamine, that rush that people get from anything, and that really succumbed me. Right. Like it really set me back. I lost money. Like had to start from square one. And
I mean, because it just reminds me of like COVID. You know, if you're in the house, you're gonna go insane. You know, you're gonna be like, we're too programmed to not be inside and not doing anything all day. Like that's why these vices come in, because we need something to do. We need something that like these, excuse me, however long the dopamine rush is, it's literally like a scientific fact. That's like you need that to keep going as a person, because. And this is a wild comparison, but it's a story that I've read a couple times. Basically, why, you know, what happened with Rob Williams, right? Why he committed suicide was because his dopamine receptors were literally like fried. Like he couldn't get happy off of anything. And it was like it was tragically fascinating, is how I'll call it, because I had never like read something like that before. You know what I mean? And I kind of use it a lot because it's like I said with these vices, you know, they're very periodical. You know, okay, gambling's legal in Mass, so is weed. If you go out where you are, it's like, you know, we get a blizzard, you know, or nor'easter where it's, you know, 10 inches of snow. You're not leaving the house.
No.
You don't want to, you know what I'm saying? You're not even driving. You're not going to the bar or anything. You know, you don't drink. But let's just say, like, you know, John Doe, who does. It's just the deterioration of, like, how stuff makes you feel. It's like where once it was like, oh yeah, this is happy, but I've done it so many times. It's like now it's just whatever for me. That's why it's like with me, where I'm 6 months sober of weed, which is actually kind of wild to say, because if anybody knew me in college, I tell people like from college, I'm like, they're like, I'm like, I haven't touched it. Yeah, I think I'm crossing 200 days soon, but like, it's just it's cool to grow as a person like that. You know what I mean? You just feel a whole lot better. So that's why I'm kind of very thankful that, you know, you just said all that stuff on the pod, because this is something that I'm going to give people. I'm going to give them, you know, this clip or this section of the podcast where it's like, you're going through that? All right, listen to what this guy has to say, because this is a very good point of it. You know what I mean? But one thing that you did do, I forget when, to promote one of your albums, you were training to be an independent wrestler.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I've never asked you about the story of that, because I wanted to save it for a moment like this. Because as a wrestling fan, obviously, as you can't really tell right now, if you're watching on YouTube, if you're not watching on YouTube, where I'm decked out in fourth rope, you know what I'm saying? How many ropes? Full, motherfucker. You know what I'm saying? But so what was that like? Because I mean, I've been to independent wrestling shows. You know what I mean?
I tried to train for a little while, but as I learned is that I am 28 years old and I have currently undergone 3 major surgeries on my body. And I probably need another shoulder surgery just from like very, very minute physical exertion. So like I wanted to do that, but at the same time, like I'd worked very, very hard for my music career and wanted to obviously keep doing that. That was like my first love. And the trainer was like, look, you have to like love it as much as you love music. And I don't think that I wouldn't have done that on top of that, but it was also this other thing of where it's like I tore my knee by getting a football at my shin and putting my leg this way, right? That's like a small thing. Like people roll their ankle, like that literally should have just been a rolled ankle, right? It shouldn't have been this big, like to do. But I blew all the cartilage of my knee. Like my knee is never going to be the same again from that. Of course not. My shoulder's never going to be the same, right? So it's like I wanted to do that very badly, but then it's like if I go on the independents and get hurt, I don't have anything to like
nothing.
That's
the scary thing, and that's what like a guy like Matt Cardona's talked about, where it's like if you get injured as an indie wrestler, and Allie Katch was talking about this because obviously she just completely destroyed her knee in Hammerstein. You know, she has a good following. You know, she has a good support system, but it's like if you're, you know, maybe just starting out, year in maybe, because that's another industry that's a lot of connections is wrestling. You know, you have to do all that. And I only know the independent wrestling circuit from like literal flyers on a wall at a gas station or something like that. But my guy Chairman Chow's told me a lot about Beyond though, and I really want to go to that. He said he loves it.
My boy from Chicopee is the photographer for them.
Nice. Yeah. So, but as you have said, and us wrestling fans, we know the physical toll.
Yeah.
Like it's just so bizarre how even still, these wrestlers are dying young. Sabu was only 60.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And there's a John Oliver segment from 2019, a week before WrestleMania 35, where he talks about this because, there's no union. There's no you're literally your own health insurance, and in wrestling, you may not have this crazy injury, but dude, if you're getting slammed on the mat for 15 minutes,
Yeah.
you're gonna feel fucked up after it. You
Oh,
have to
yeah.
go back and ice shit. You have to any bump you take really can be like this big problem. And I remember I was talking with my friend Sean about it. Remember when it was Hangman and Moxley, and obviously they're coming up at All In, but when Moxley gave him a clothesline, he just got knocked out.
Yeah.
I was watching it live. I'm like, what the fuck just happened?
Yeah, that was bad.
Like he really just from like a clothesline.
Yeah.
It was like not. It's like what we see as nothing to them is literally like that. That's how bad your career can go south. And it's just. And I try to explain this to people who are like casual fans or like just think wrestling's like, oh, just WWE. But yeah, it really is this whole thing. And it's just, that's why anyone who does it, I salute them.
Yeah.
Because, I haven't had a major surgery yet, knock on wood, thank God. Would I ever train to be a wrestler for that? The call is there, but it's like, no.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's rough. It's rough now. Like, I could have done it, but it's like, and I was good for, like, I was impressing people right out the gate when I was, training and me being sort of a bigger guy and stuff like that and the way I could, like, move fast. But, I messed up my foot 3 weeks in. Like, I did all these things, and I've always been very, very injury prone since I was a young child.
Right.
Like, I wasn't very athletic, and in the sports, I'd always get hurt. And, like, so, I'm good with my gym and good with my
Right, yeah. The
my
simple
music,
stuff.
like, very simple.
Of course. But that's awesome because I remember you didn't, which is the Kurt Angle comment makes it funny, just you being a wrestling fan, also you actually training.
Yeah.
So that makes me kind of think, how did you get into wrestling?
I got into wrestling just like watching SmackDown at my grandmother's house in the den.
Nice.
And just really,
classic way.
really just really just like locked in with wrestling. And then when AEW came out in 2019, I started getting into wrestling again with my best friend Steven Fowler, who I watch wrestling. This is the one rare time, and I'm sorry I miss you guys, but this is the one time like we don't hang out. Like we hang out every single Wednesday night and watch AEW since 2019. So that's where I really became like a super fan, and I'm a big AEW,
of course,
AEW,
Dub Soldier, baby,
Dub Soldier.
You know what I mean?
Big AEW fan, and that's where I really started like loving it, and I always like really enjoyed it, but I really didn't like. I know this sounds like kind of corny, but like when I first got Logic at 19 years old, there wasn't anything I did other than work and music, right? Like I didn't have hobbies. Like I've recently started getting hobbies other than gambling.
Yeah, right.
That was a bad hobby. I started, I started really enjoying like disc golf, right? Like I'll go disc golf by myself or anything of that nature. So yeah, so wrestling's been my other like hobby to like take away from music and work and stuff like that.
No, because I mean that was me when AEW started, because this is what I don't get about the criticism of AEW. Anybody who watches like religiously AEW watched WWE before that. Like I wasn't watching Ring of Honor. I wasn't watching New Japan. I maybe saw like a match here and there. I'm like, that's cool, but it's like I can't watch it consistently.
Yeah.
Even like TNA. Like I remember when WWE used to have, remember WWE 24/7, the on-demand channel?
Yeah.
They had that. That came out, and it was under the wrestling section. So when you used to go to on-demand on Xfinity and click the wrestling section, TNA stuff would be there too. And that's how I found out about TNA and got into it. Obviously, I didn't watch it like weekly. Like I maybe was running through that whole section like at my grandmother's house all the time because she had on-demand. But anyone who watched AEW watched WWE like that before. Like that, we weren't watching anything else because we weren't. I don't even think Ring of Honor was on TV.
Ring of Honor was literally. It was crazy too. Ring of Honor actually aired on Nessun. So you could
did.
watch.
That's right,
You could
it
watch
did.
it
I
on Ness, and
remember
it was like the
yeah.
only channel that you could get that on.
Right.
But no, I actually was. It's crazy that you think about that because I watched TNA religiously as a kid. Right. I was big on Spike TV when I was young. You know, you'd watch things like
That's right. That's what it was. Spike TV.
Yeah,
That's right.
You'd
Yeah.
watch things like the Deadliest Warrior where they would go in and do like those old things.
I love that shit. I used to love that. I think they should bring it back, honestly. I love that.
Bar Rescue, like those shows, and then I'd watch TNA, and I would be a huge. I was actually like, I was probably a bigger TNA fan than I was like an actual WWE fan, and that was probably just because my age, right? Like, TNA was like during my teens, so it's like I could see.
I was a bitch for Halloween one year.
Oh,
if you want to know something fun, how I got the mask, ready? So there used to be a Toys R Us in Somerville. I forget where. But there was a 2-pack. It was Abyss and AJ Styles, and it came with an Abyss mask. So I was like, and there was a Halloween party at my community center. I was like, I don't have a Halloween costume. I was like, fuck it, why not? Like, you know what I mean? I'll just wear the mask. And this is also funny because, again, going back to the Kurt Angle comment, Kurt Angle was the first wrestler that I was like, holy shit, he's in another company. Because I remember that week, he was on, I think it was ECW, WWE ECW, 1 TV, and then the next week he's in TNA. I'm like, that can happen.
Yeah.
Because that was what, 2007, 2008? I'm 10. I'm not on, I don't even know about dirt sheets. I'm not on like online forums or shit like that. So I'm like, what? Like, that could happen. That's awesome. Like, you know what I mean? That's what kind of like got me the hook.
I remember as a kid watching him debut against Samoa Joe and that headbutt that was given him. That was just unbelievable.
Yeah, that was legit crazy. Yeah, I tell that story all the time because it's my favorite story. But that's why I think it's good to have both. You have that music knowledge, you have that wrestling knowledge, because they kind of go hand in hand. You know what I'm saying? And not Michael Rubin. I don't like Michael Rubin. Rick Rubin has this good comment. I always forget the podcast he was on, but basically he says wrestling does real life better than real life does. Like, wrestling is actually a great metaphor for real life because it's really the only live theater that you see where you actually get invested in a character and not the actual character's person. Like, you're not invested in Mark Calloway. You're invested in The Undertaker.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So it's just how you can look, you can look at life as like who's a face and who's a heel, and you can, fantasy book a storyline, especially in like the music industry. You kind of like take these bits and pieces, and if you apply it to one, it makes sense for the other. So I think that's why I always encourage people to kind of watch wrestling. You know what I mean? Where it's like, when they go, oh, it's fake, but like, I finally think that the stigma of that fake shit is like turning around, because it's like, okay, Star Wars is fake. Yeah, you still like it. All these shows are fake. Even reality TV shows are fake. Like, they're literally just like, all right, let's take the Desperate Housewives, right? Because my mom loves it and that shit annoys me. What's her name? Teresa Goodice, right? She's the face. You know what I'm saying? She's their John Cena, whatever the hell. Whoever, the girl she's beefing with, her rival. She's the heel. Yeah. It's like you literally just take anything, apply it, boom. That's how wrestling does it too.
Exactly.
It's such a beautiful art form because of that.
Yeah.
And that's why I explain to people all the time. It's like, you can have the casual view. Don't get me wrong. Anybody who's anybody, like, if you haven't watched an episode of Raw, SmackDown, you haven't watched a day in your life, you can name a wrestler. Whether it could be The Rock, it could be John Cena, it could be Batista, because they're in Hollywood, but, Hulk Hogan. Like, you can name a wrestler. That's how embedded in pop culture it is.
Yeah.
Like, not so much like, I guess for all the bigger pop culture things too, like, the DC and Star Wars, but I just feel with wrestling, it's so much more prominent because you see these guys a lot. You know what I'm saying? The Rock's in 5 movies a year, something like that?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Some ridiculous. They all stink, but you know what I mean? I mean, there is a good one coming out.
That's why he's back in WWE.
Right,
folks.
Exactly. That's another thing I've been explaining to people. But he's got an A24 one that does look good coming out.
Yeah,
but
does look good.
All right, take John Cena. He's now in the superhero world being Peacemaker. Batista just completely became the best wrestler turned actor ever. So yeah, it's just, that's why I love how embedded in the culture it is. And I love how, no matter what creative outlet you do, you can still go to wrestling for a lot of motivation. For these ciphers that are coming up, there's going to be a lot of wrestler references. Yeah. I already talked to Chairman Chow about it. You know what I mean? There's going to be a lot. And it's not so much overdo it, but all right, this is another great example. West Side Gun, right? one of the best rappers out. Has curated some of the best albums, has like some of the best tracks, all that shit, right?
For sure, for sure.
Diehard wrestling fan. What does he do? Starts his own promotion. He's like literally like, I don't want to call him a money mark, but it's like if I had his money, the Hardys would be my tag team champions too.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
He has the money in doing it, and it's another
Right.
passion that he can do separate from music. Because like a lot of the times, like as a creative, you kind of like sometimes you have to venture into other things to sort of like regain your love for something else too, right?
Right.
Like so.
But like, and I went to Fourth Rope in Vegas, and it was a packed show. He got a good crowd, but it's like, I felt like with that, I was looking around the crowd. I'm like, okay, I can tell kind of who's a wrestling fan here, but like he had like other like artists there, and so he had like these women there that looked like they were just going to the club, and I'm like, all right,
Yeah.
they like Griselda, but because they like Griselda,
They're showing
and him,
up there, yeah.
they'll show up to this. It's a really good formula. It really
Yeah.
is. I can't go to the next one because it's in Paris, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've heard rumors that it's going to be in Boston, Hammerstein, and Philly, so I think I'm there for that, definitely.
For sure.
Before we get out of here,
Okay.
you know what I mean? What I want you to do right now, I want to tell you, the good people, what does 2025 have in store? The rest of it, because we're at the midway point. It's June now, surprisingly. What does the rest of 2025 have in store for DK?
Right now I'm really just kind of seeing like the reactions from the videos and really just trying to push a lot post-release. I've realized now in the current 2025 music era, there's a lot in post-release than pre-release.
Yeah.
So just trying to push the video of No Trust Some Lies, I'm going to do a video for Voicemail and then a video for The Mess I Made. On August 15th at the Nook in Westfield, I have a headline show with my very good friends and also artists I work with, Little Step, Syllabus, and Davey, with my DJ and producer Maz, who's doing DJing, and he's also going to do like a boiler room type of set afterwards for that. I have a project coming out with Syllabus called The Rise, who Syllabus is probably one of the most underrated artists out of Western Mass that you can think of. I mean, the dude is nasty. And when I found him, I was like, how are you not huge? Like, he can rap his ass off.
You gotta link me.
Like he can sing, like he is amazing. So we're gonna get that show August 15th to put it out. I have already produced the project for Syllabus. It's really right now we're just working on like the fine tuned mixes and stuff like that. It's gonna be out at the end of June. So really just that and grinding, making projects with other people. My boy. He went by a different name, but he's gonna go by Burn Slow. He's gonna come back with a new album. And, you know, working with Little Step and all those other people. And then really just trying to figure out, you know, what I really want to do going forward. I think I probably want to drop an EP in the summer, probably drop another album, you know, towards the fall, winter area. And really just keep grinding and seeing the reaction and trying to build and keep trying to lose weight. You know, I've lost 30 pounds since February.
Attaboy, there you go.
February 1st.
Fuck yeah.
When I started the album. So yeah, so just trying to I'm trying to get like 20 more pounds down and
Of course, yeah.
get the extra weight off me and grind and just try to blow up and try to put on for Western Mass.
Well,
try to
you
put
know,
on for
and
the city.
we had a couple conversations back at the start of the year, and I could really tell there was a fire and desire there to really like push music. You have your whole life, but I feel like you were like, all right, 2025 is like the year that this is not the advent of DK, but this is like, all right, I know I can do this.
It was like, bro, I think I produced, I'm not even going to lie to you, I think I produced over 200 songs the last 3 years, right? So, like, and I love doing that, and I love making projects and all that stuff, but, like, I also know that I can, I can sing, I can make a good album, I can sing my ass off, like, you know, like, I really wanted to work on that and focus on that.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's good to have, you know, your priorities in order, you know what I mean? Because a lot of people, a lot of artists are all over the place. You know what I'm saying? They're like, all right, this week I'm going to produce, this next week I'm going to sing. So it's like, all right.
And I'll probably still be a little all over the place. I'm not going to lie to you. Like, you know, hopefully, you know, with this reaction and going locking in the studio and making more art and making more songs is probably the route I'm going to take. But, you know, I just got to kind of see and do all that. But I've been locked into myself this year more than I ever have in my life. So that's what I want to keep on doing.
Now, and this is the last question I want to ask you, because you were on the Turntable Teachers podcast.
I was.
In 2021?
Yeah.
Right? I believe so. 2021, right?
Yeah.
So compare yourself from then to now. Where you weren't even in the studio for the Turntable Teachers podcast.
I don't gamble anymore. I don't bounce at bars anymore. And I think just the difference of me is that I was able to learn the lesson of, being sort of in a relationship, and also learning the lesson of having a dependency on, like we show with gambling, but like just in general, just like being able to find myself as a person. I think I always knew what I wanted to do, but for a long time I'd be like, oh, I'm a goofy guy. Let's like put out stuff like this, or I'm this and that, the third, and like I just figured out myself, right? Like I know who I am more so now than I was back then. So I think that's really just the difference, and I feel like my skill level's gotten a lot better, and I just have grown as a person.
That's very apropos for the DK Who Are You album rollout that you just said you figured out yourself. Because the one last thing I will say about your artistry is you really bat 1,000 on music videos. Like there's some like great skill there. And I know that stuff takes a while, like the second place video, where you have yourself booing yourself.
And a lot of people don't know this, but I will write my scripts out beforehand, and I write it to the word and to the time signature. Nice. So I will go and
that's in depth as fuck.
So I'll and there's been times that I'm sorry. Shout out to my videographers, and especially Wolf, who did the No Trust Them Lies video. There's times where, like a lot of time, people go in the studio and be like, I just want to run a gunshot. I just want a music video. I just want this. Or they'll come in and they don't 100% know. I think I'm the opposite, where I'm like, yeah, shoot this angle, this way, this, that, the third. Yeah. And like they're like, whoa. Like there's a lot that sort of goes into it. But yeah, I really write my scripts into there. I really try to use a lot of, serious but comedic elements in some of my videos. And there's a lot of Easter eggs in my videos that I try to keep on. And I hope that as people tune in and become, listeners of my music, that they'll try to pick up on the Easter eggs. Because in the No Trust Them Lies videos, there's a lot of them. So,
right, of course. All right. So the last thing I need you to do is please tell everybody where they can find you, whether it's socials or DSPs. Where are you?
My new album, DK Who Are You, is out now on all platforms. You can find that on every single platform that there is to stream music on, besides maybe LimeWire, RIP. You can find me on all platforms at DK Music 4 and 3 on everywhere.
All right. And real quick, it's funny that like there's a lot of like music platforms out there I didn't know existed, because when I was signing up for DistroKid and he was uploading the Cypher audio, I'm like, what are these things? There was like V-Star.
Bro,
like,
I posted my album, they put a Roblox. I was like, Roblox?
Yeah, that's what it was too. I was like, what do you mean Roblox? I was like, what? I was like, they got music on there?
They got Roblox out there.
It's good. I saw Pandora music. I was like, oh, that takes me back. That's good to see. You know what I mean? Yeah. Used to love Pandora. But I'm like, I texted Mike. I'm like, do I have to check all these? Like, does it matter?
Some of them it does. Like for Snapchat, you gotta own like the pub and the split.
No, I seen that. Yeah, like but I'm like, holy shit! Like, it's just cool getting not really in that much depth, but like exploring what like the music industry is. That's why it's like, wow, so every artist goes through this. Huh? I'm like, fuck. No wonder why I only want to do like 4 ciphers a year.
Yeah.
But anyways, ladies and gentlemen, like I said, this episode was a long time coming. That was DK. He drove all the way out here from Holyoke. Y'all gotta show him some love. You know what I mean? He took the time out of his day. He wasn't around for his boys to watch Dynamite. He's gonna go watch Dynamite still, just not with his boys. And that, that wrestling shit, that hits. It hits watching with your boys. I love that. But before I get out of here, folks, go watch the first ever Say That Cypher Volume 1. It is out now on YouTube and all music DSPs if you want to hear the audio. I would suggest watching on YouTube because it was beautifully shot by Mike Scarfo. Everyone's been saying it. So, but like I said, shout
out to Mike.
Sure, shout out to Mike Scarfo for the videographer shit. He's new to it, but he's finding his lane, and I love it. But as always, y'all know where to find me on Instagram. My personal is REPETE617. And the Instagram for Say That is say_that_pod. Also, I forgot to mention, I have now Say That hoodies out right now. I understand it is hot as fuck. I get it, and I probably should have dropped them in the winter. But the hoodies are the first ideas that came to mind because of the design. I will be making shirts, dad hats, and shorts. So be on the lookout for that. I would love if you're a former guest of the show to get one, because that really, represents the pod or what you've been on, and I appreciate y'all. But if you're a supporter, please come find me. You know what I'm saying? I don't have a Shopify, I'm not at that stage yet, or like a website to buy it off, but please DM me, you know what I'm saying, your size, what size shirt, shorts, or hoodie you are. I want to get these podcast shirts out here. I want to do it. We got a new logo, you know what I'm saying? New branding, new everything. Everything's new on Say That, and I want to show that love back. So again, please follow me on Instagram, and if you do, DM me about it. DM me about some clothes, because I got them for you. But, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you very much for tuning in to episode 101. We are now in the hundreds era of Say That. And I will leave you with this. Don't say this. Say that. And we'll see you in the next episode. Peace.